region, Mr. Matthew Dickerson. Morning, Dicko. I hear 3D printed houses. We've been talking about this a little bit on and off, but we're one step closer to this being a reality here in the Central West.
Well, it is getting very close to reality. We had Councillor Matt Wright brought a motion to Council saying we should reserve some blocks of land specifically for 3D printed housing. So we've done that already, but there's a bit of an issue in the fact that it hasn't been done before. Nowhere in New South Wales has a house been 3D printed. So we had to work out whether or not we could actually get through all the regulatory issues around a 3D printed house. So if a company came along, put an application in, put a development application in for a 3D printed house, could we actually approve it? So we had to go through a process there to make sure we could actually do that. And we got a report back from our development and environmental design team, and they basically looked at the regulatory issues. And essentially, as long as someone still puts in a valid DA, we can approve a 3D printed house. It doesn't mean any 3D printed house will be approved because obviously there's still steps to go through, but it can be approved. So that's pretty exciting. And we actually have got a tender out at the moment waiting for companies to put their tenders in relation to an amenity block over in West Dubbo that'll be 3D printed. It's an amenity block that needs to be upgraded anyway. It'll be a great chance for some of these companies that have been contacting us wanting to do a 3D printed house to show off what they can do, and hopefully we'll get a really good price on that and a really quick construction.
Do you know, Matt, how long it takes to print a 3D printed house? Because I know that normal houses are anywhere from 6 to 16 weeks to build.
Well, the interesting part is that we get excited about 3D printing housing because it takes a couple of days to do the printing part, but that doesn't mean you move in after that time frame. So the time that it would take to lay the bricks and do the framework and all the rest of it, that's the part that's really exciting with 3D printed housing, because that takes a couple of days. It means you've essentially got your outside walls, and you can do your inside walls 3D printed as well. So you've essentially got the structure that's finished within a couple of days.
Obviously utilities.
You've got to still do the cupboards, you've got to still put the floor coverings in, put the windows in, put all the electricity, plumbing, all that sort of stuff. So that still takes time, but it still will knock a significant amount of time off a house, which is obviously a huge issue at the moment. We've got lots of people who want to move to Dubbo. They're all saying they want to come to Dubbo and listen to Triple M. So they're desperate to get here. But in essence, we just don't have enough housing for them. So this concept is to make it faster, but it should also be a bit cheaper. So the issue with affordable housing might be addressed by this as well. So it's not going to be magic. We're not going to click our fingers and solve every problem in one go, but I think it's going to make it better than it is now.
We're going to see also potentially a bit of redevelopment, further redevelopment in town as well.
So it's not so much a redevelopment, Alo, it's more an urban release area. Now, this is the northwest urban release area that's been set aside for some time to be developed eventually, maybe 5-10 years down the track. But because there's so much demand for people wanting to come to Dubbo, because everyone wants to come and listen to Triple M in Dubbo, then essentially what we're going to do is develop that area sooner than we thought. We've actually got the zoning so people can see the different zones at the moment. But the most important part we're doing with that is we want to tap into the New South Wales Government's Accelerated Infrastructure Fund. We think it's going to cost us about $12 million to put all the infrastructure in the ground to develop that area. And council would normally fund that out of land sales in that area. But because of this infrastructure fund, the application process for that is now open. We're putting an application in for that where we'll only have to pay 25% of that, so about $3 million, and the state government, if we're successful, will fund $9 million of that. So again, that's a bonus for council in terms of how much money we'll have to develop all of that area, but also we'll bring that whole area forward so we can get people to come to Dubbo. We've got somewhere for them to build houses, and again, just keep developing areas of Dubbo for all these extra people that want to come to Dubbo.
And also, Matt, talk about saving council money on cars with bringing some electric into the fleet.
It's really interesting, Alo. Everyone thinks that electric vehicles are dearer than petrol vehicles. And when you look at the ticket price, that makes sense. Some equivalent models might be 20 grand or even more dearer than the equivalent petrol models. But we've actually talked to our fleet manager, Steve Colliver. He's done a fantastic job in preparing a report and brought it to council. And that showed quite definitively that when you look at the total cost of ownership of an electric vehicle, it actually ends up being cheaper than a petrol vehicle. So we've basically got a policy now that's on public display where it will allow our staff to change over to electric vehicles.
So it'd be a bit of a change seeing the council logo on the side of electric vehicles driving around town.
That's right. We've got about 68 cars, petrol cars in our fleet now, staff vehicles, and there hasn't been the ability for them in the past to change over to electric vehicles. This new policy, again, it's on public display. If it comes back to council and finally approved, this new policy will allow those staff, when it's time to change over their car, to look at electric vehicles. And I can't stress enough, our fleet manager has calculated that this will actually save the community money. So don't be scared by the dearer ticket price. It's all about how much is petrol, how much is electricity, how much is the maintenance cost, what's the resale value, so the total cost of owning that car over a 4-year time frame.
Interesting to see what the future holds for council cars. Mayor Matthew Dickinson, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Always my pleasure chatting to you.